Welcome in another edition of the Dirt Racing Podcast. Let's get started. Welcome to the Dirt Racing Podcast. This is a busy edition as we have Brian Hulbert as a guest, JJ Yeley, and a couple surprise guests. We'll get to the race results. We're leaving out the BC39 because we'll be talking and recapping that in a few minutes on this episode. And on the next episode, the World 100 would be recapped. First of all, for your sprint fans, car fans, the Tuscarora 50 was at the Port Royal Speedway, and picking up the big check there was Aaron Reitzel. For the World of Outlaws at Chico, California, for the Gold Cup Race of Champions, the big winner was Darren Pittman. And in the state of Iowa, it was the annual IMCA Super Nationals with your winners. Ricky Thornton won the late models. Nate Kubin won the sport compacts. Dylan Nelson won the hobby stocks. Darren Smith won the stock cars. Jonathan Logue won the sport mods. And Ethan Dodson won the modifieds. And that's the look at your highlights for this week.
Welcome back to the Dirt Racing Podcast. I have a special guest that actually announced the BC39, Rob Klepper. How are you doing, Rob?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
Good. It was a good race to go to. Got to go Thursday night.
Yeah, it was an awesome event. I mean, 2 days at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway doesn't get much better than that.
And then let's talk about Tuesday night, the draw first.
Yeah, the draft was pretty interesting. Obviously, every driver was able to choose their starting spot in their heat race. They took the entry list and randomized it, so drivers came up at random, whatnot. So they were able to pick their spot in their heat race, and it was interesting to see who kind of had a strategy, who had an idea where they wanted to start, and other guys that just kind of came up and were looking at the board and go, yeah, I think I just want to go there. So it was kind of neat to see what drivers, what teams really kind of, I wouldn't say were serious about it, but kind of put some thought into it before they got there. Because if you were drawn late, you really had to kind of think, where do you want to start in the heat race to try and get the most points? But even more importantly is, who do you want to start against? Who do you want to race against? If you're in a heat race that's got, Larson and Zeb Wise and Courtney and Stenhouse, and it's stacked, maybe I won't want to jump in that one. Maybe I want to jump in another one. So the draft was pretty cool. I think everybody had a good time. It was a great party, if you will, at the USAC HQ. So it was cool. I hope we do it again.
And then we got to Wednesday for the heat race night.
Wednesday night, it was off the charts, man. I mean, it was 10 heat races total. Obviously, everybody knew where they were starting based on the draw. So once we got to the heat races, it was pretty much go time. And the way the format works there, with similar to say like a Chili Bowl style format, is it's all about points. So passing points, finish points. You really need to pass cars you run the racetrack, because that will set you up for the qualifiers held on Thursday. And the heat races were pretty off the chart. I mean, 86 or 87 drivers started a heat race, and it was no fooling around. I mean, that's a tight little boring, and adventure racing has been pretty awesome all year. But at that track, man, those guys have their elbows up and we're going for it.
Can you tell the folks where you called the race from?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was actually in a lift down in turn number 1, myself and Pat Sullivan, and we were in. I would call it a 2-person lift. I don't think you could have fit another person up there, but so we were outside in the elements. We cut all the mud during hot laps, and then once the track had kind of slipped off, it got a little dusty, and we ate all that dust as well. And it was cool vantage point down there. We're just below timing and scoring. Jake and Spridge were up there a little bit above us, kind of letting us know what was going on if we had any questions. But so we were kind of suspended in the air down at turn number 1, just outside turn 1 on the entrance. So it was kind of rad.
And then after we got done with the heats, they had this pursuit, like Australian pursuit.
Yeah, the Australian Pursuit Race. It changed it a little bit from what we saw in the inaugural event last year. It was 25 laps this year with five lap segments. The heat race winner and the person who got the most points in that heat race that wasn't the heat race winner made it to the pursuit race. So you took 10 cars, 10 heat races, 2 cars per heat race. That gave you 20 cars. And then there were 4 promoters options. So Doug Bowles added four drivers to the back of that pursuit race. So they lined up based on their fastest lap they turned in their heat race, completely inverted. So if that makes any sense at all. Top 20 cars getting in there, inverted based on their fastest lap in the heat race, and we went green. First 5-lap segment, if you get past or if you're running last, you're out once the caution comes out. If you cause a caution or get involved in a wreck or stop on the racetrack, you're out as well. So one thing I think that was new this year versus what we had last year is the guy running last wasn't automatically out last year. So essentially, you can kind of just hang around there and not get past because you're running last, and would have made it all the way to the final segment. This year, you kind of had to take off because if you're running last when that caution came out, then you were done. They sent you to the infield. So by the time we got through all of it to the final 5 laps, it came down to 3 drivers. It was Kyle Larson, Michael Pickens, and Justin Grant. And if anyone hasn't seen the highlights or were unable to watch the race live, just Google it. It's all over online, Flow Racing with the highlights. And you said put it out on their social media. People shared it, of course. I think last time I saw it was like 450,000 views or something on Facebook. I mean, it's pretty insane. But those 3 cars for those 5 laps was pretty off the charts. And then of course, turn 3 last lap, Pickens kind of gets into Larson in on the corner. Justin Grant's up on top. Basically runs out of talent. He gets up in the fence, gets upside down. Larson does a 360 and keeps going. So it was pretty crazy, man. And I know a lot of people were like, "What the heck just happened?" And in fact, that was the one thing I said. Pat and I were both looking at each other, and I kind of just looked at him and said, "What did we just see?" Because it was pretty insane.
Would they bring that element eventually to the Chili Bowl? Because it looks fun.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean they do that. I can't think of what it's called, where 2 guys go out on the racetrack and race each other, kind of
pole shuffle. I think it is.
Yeah, right. There you go, pole shuffle. And they do the pole shuffle, and that's pretty cool. We've seen the pole shuffle over like Australia, New Zealand does it, and then the pursuit race. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, I don't know if you would see it at the Chili Bowl, just because for the BC race, it really had no bearing on any of the lineups for the next day. It was a cool race to do for the fans on the first night. Paid $1,500 to win, and then $100 for each car passed to the winner. So I think when Zeb Wise won it last year, he passed 17 cars, so he had a pretty decent payday, and Kyle Larson got a pretty decent payday as well. Not that he really cared about it at that point, man. He just liked putting on the show. So that pursuit thing's pretty cool, and I think if we see it a few times a year, I think that'll be good.
And then we got to Thursday where the qualifiers were off the charts first of all.
Yeah, so after the 10 heat races, we took the top 36 in points, inverted them for the 6 qualifiers. So essentially 6 cars got inverted based on the points that they had in the heat race. So top 36 in the qualifiers got inverted. Then again, another opportunity to get more points, not necessarily where you finished, but how many cars you passed, along with finishing points through the qualifiers, would set you up for the feature event. And I believe, if memory serves, we took, I think, the top 16 in the points. After the 6th qualifier, and then if you didn't finish in the top 16, 17 through a certain number, I can't remember, say 17 through 24 went to the B main, 25 went to the C. We had a pair of D's and an E. So if you were stuck in an E main or a D main, that means you didn't have a very good race or qualifier. You had to kind of go through the alphabet soup.
And then we got to the alphabet soup and the 71 car.
Yeah, Jesse Caldwell. He put on a pretty good show, didn't he? I mean, racing his way in, I believe, from the D main?
First D main.
Yeah, so he came from the first D main through the C, through the B, and got into the A. So pretty impressive run that he had, and then he finished up I think sixth or so in the feature event. So I mean that's pretty impressive. He also took home that big money courtesy of Pro Source, that passing master award that we give. He passed a total of 34 cars. The next closest was Tyler Courtney. I think he had like 23. So Jesse Caldwell definitely the hard charger of the 2 days.
Yeah. And then when we got down to the racing beforehand, it's kind of neat what Doug Wolf did, went to each car and talked to the driver.
Yeah, Doug Bowles has been really good, and obviously a huge supporter of that event. The BC 39, instrumental in the inaugural event. After talking to Brian Clausen before he passed away, it's something that they wanted to do at that racetrack there. Yeah, I thought it was really cool for him to go. And he came on the mic during both the opening ceremonies, both nights, and went out and spoke to each driver in the feature event before we pushed him off. And I thought that was really cool.
And then we got down to the action, and it was a barn burner till about the end.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, like I said before, that track is so racy. Whether it's down low, up top, they're up on the fence. Cushion was moved all the way up to the fence, and it was a pretty good lip. It was a little treacherous down middle, coming off at turn 2, and the entrance to turn 3 bit a lot of guys. We saw Thomas Meserol got upside down. We saw Christopher Bell get bit up there. Turn 1, a lot of guys beating on the cushion, really upset the car. So it was exciting, a lot of action. Zeb Wise really put on a show. Him and Kyle Larson were battling, and then once Larson kind of pushed him up in the fence, and then Wise lost the lead, and then Larson actually had to go. I think had a tire, went back, had a fix, raced back up to the top 10. I think he finished around 9th. And Tyler Courtney finished second to Zeb Wise after Wise got the win, coming from 20th. So it was all Clarkson Marshall Racing podium with Chad Boat and Logan Seavey there running out your top 5. But those CMR guys to go 1, 2, 3 for Brian Clausen was pretty special for sure.
And then a driver that hardly races that did a good job was Mr. Dylan Welch.
Yeah, what about Dylan Welch? I mean, he shows up to a Kokomo beginning of the year in April, the Kokomo Grand Prix, lays down a new track record, and he said, hey, I'm a pavement driver by trade, though he's pretty much only run third as of late. But yeah, Welch really did a good job. We've seen him make the Chili Bowl, running a very, very limited schedule. This year he's run probably more events than he has the past few years. Gets into the show, and he started, I believe, 8th, maybe outside row 4, and finished just one spot out of the top 10 and 11th. So he's cool to watch for sure, and that's always neat to see him come back and run with the series.
And then the one that really did, I was surprised that was there, was Mr. Gio Scelzi. That he's a good wing driver.
Yeah, he's had a pretty good year. I mean, coming off pretty good runs at Knoxville, the 360 Nationals, the 410 Nationals. Actually, him and his brother both making the show at the 410 Nationals. But yeah, he doesn't run many major races at all, other than maybe the Chili Bowl. And got teamed up there with Tucker Boat, and I mean they put 3 of their 4 cars in the feature, and he started 9th. So I'm kind of just brought up the results 9th, and then finished in the 14th spot. So yeah, I mean he's another hot shoe. He's had a really good year. And it was cool to see him put it in the show and get a top 15 out of it.
And I would recommend to go to it. I was there.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not? How can you not, man? I mean, it's sold out at I think 500 seats to the grandstands this year, and it was jam packed again. The first night was pretty full, if not full, and it's a neat event. I mean, I didn't grow up here in Indiana, though I live in Indiana now. So for the people here that have been going to the Indianapolis 500 for their entire life or generations, or going to the Brickyard since it started in the 90s, to listen to them talk about how neat it is to see not only a night race at the Speedway, but to see a dirt track inside of turn number 3. It's a really neat facility. Obviously, if anyone has never been to it. But to be able to see the midgets go at it in turn 3 on the dirt track under the lights at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, I mean, I think it's going to be special and get more and more special each and every year. You know, it's definitely a bucket list item if you're a racing fan.
Yeah, and car counts like the Chili Bowl, the second biggest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, we had, 115 or so last year. This year we had 93 entered. I think 87 actually took a green flag. So, I mean, that's pretty big right there. I mean, you talk to fans, they want to see more than one race. You know, how cool would it be to see something during the month of May at the Speedway there as well. So, you just never know. I mean, the good thing is, Doug Bowles, he's a short track racer at heart. He grew up going to the dirt tracks. He loves coming to the USAC races. We saw him at Midget Week. We saw him at Sprint Week. They had an event for the TQ midgets recently for Brad Gray, and he was at that event. A handful of USAC guys went down and ran that. I think it was in Rush.
Still there?
There. Yeah, I'm still here.
That's why I'm making sure.
Yep. And so, yeah, I mean, Doug Bowles, having him part of this deal, I think is certainly going to help keep it around for a long time.
Okay, yeah. That's it for the BC. We'll take a quick break and come back with more with Rob. Rob, you came to Knoxville was the first time this year, the Corn Belt Nationals. That was successful.
Yeah, it's a great event. I mean, anytime you can go to Knoxville, it's always cool for us, and for me especially. I got to announce the All-Stars there way back in the day, and the Knoxville Midget Nationals a few times with USAC and I think it was 06, 07 time, and so it's cool to come back with the sprint cars for sure. And Brady Bacon just kind of put a whooping on them and sweeping both nights and taking was it 20 grand on night number 2 and 5 on the first night, so $25,000 took away from Knoxville, but. Yeah, it's a great event. Everybody there is great. Kendra's doing a great job, and the only person that I missed was Tony Bacco, but he wasn't in the house, so Chris and I had to handle things. But it was a lot of fun.
And you got the wing cars too with that.
Yeah, that was cool. The first night they ran the 360 wing cars for this their weekly show, and then Saturday night ran the 410s, and they always put on a good show. At that point, these guys started to kind of tune up for the 360 Nationals, 410 Nationals, the Captain Classic, and at that point. So Brady Bacon, it was cool for him because he was good. He ran both the 360 and the 410 Nationals, I believe. So he got some extra laps there, and it's cool to see the non-wing guys run around Knoxville. You know, the fans there don't get an opportunity to see the sprint cars without the wing there much, and so it's neat to see them, 2, 3, 4 wide through the corners and toss it in a little bit earlier than the wing guys. I'll be a little bit slower lap time, mile per hour, but we'll take it when you can see 3 and 4 wide racing.
Yeah, and then next year I heard it's moving back a week. Is that true?
I don't know. I mean, that's what I had heard, but I don't know for sure on that. But when it's going to come out, I know obviously Levi Jones and Spriggs and all those guys are working on schedules for next year. They usually have those things out by the PRI show in December. So yeah, it's hard to say how everything's going to shake out. USAC right now has a lot of momentum, both with the midget sprint and the Silver Crown Series. So going out to Pennsylvania with the sprint cars and then coming back with the midgets, it seems like there's just more tracks that just kind of want to see USAC stuff. We had that Mid-America Midget Week the week after Corn Belt Nationals, and that was really successful. So, a lot of good teams right now, a lot of good drivers, a lot of great competition, and it seems like, promoters kind of want to see that once in a while. So, hopefully we can get back there more than once. I'd love to see the midgets back in Knoxville. Who knows now what will happen,
Yeah. And then, speaking of the Silver Crown, the car count on dirt's been excellent.
Yeah, it's been pretty off the charts. I mean, what they've done the last few years and really focusing on getting that series built back up. Pavement cars, I mean, you're in the high teens, low 20s, depending on where the race is. They just ran Raceway Park Saturday night, and Cody Swanson went wire to wire and won the race, but as he looks for his 5th USAC Silver Crown Series championship. So, yeah, no, you're right. The car counts way up on the dirt. The coin was huge. They had a big field there, and 2 dirt races left. They'll be at Springfield, which got rained out. They'll be back there on the mile on September 22nd. I think that's a Sunday in a couple weeks. And then of course, that Saturday after that, the 28th, will be the 4th Crown Nationals at Eldora. So 2 Silver Crown races to go, and they'll be all done for the year.
And then what's some of the bigger events left on the calendar?
Well, for us, obviously, any Silver Crown event's a big one. But once you get through the 4th Crown, we'll be at the Terre Haute Action Track for the Jim Hurtubise Classic this Friday with the sprint cars. Hopstad Hustler, 10 grand to win, co-sanctioned with MSCS. This Saturday with the sprint cars, and then of course the 4th Crown, the 28th of September. Obviously a big one there. Jason Leffler Memorial, a big one for the USAC Midget Series coming up on Thursday, October 17th. That's a big one there. They'll also be at Tri-State 2 days later on the 19th. Then you go out west and close out the year for both the midgets and the sprint cars. Gets pretty exciting. You have the Oval Nationals November 7, 8, 9 at the Paris Auto Speedway. We'll be at the Placerville Raceway in Placerville, California with the midgets for the Hangtown 100. A lot of big money up for grabs there. And of course, Turkey Night on Thanksgiving night at Ventura Raceway on the 28th of November. So still a lot of big marquee crown jewel events. And if you can't make it out to any of them, well, it's pretty cool. You can watch them all live on Flow Racing. So it's been a pretty good year with Flow, and looking forward to closing out. We got about 25% of the schedule left, give or take, and definitely in the sprint cars, and the midgets with a handful of events too. So we'll keep her moving and getting excited to get out west and close out the year at Turkey Night.
Do you still do some TV still?
Yes, I do. I do quite a bit actually for Lucas Oil Studios. I cover all the Lucas Oil Off-Road Racing Series events, the short course off-road shows out west. We just actually voiced over the final night of the 360 Nationals and the Knoxville Nationals, the 410 Nationals. So that'll be airing pretty soon on MAV TV. Then I cover a lot of different stuff for Lucas as well, but still doing quite a bit of TV stuff, keeping me busy.
Yeah, and I'm trying to. And where did you get your start at?
Well, originally I got my start at a micro midget track in Visalia, California. I'm from the West Coast, and my degree is in broadcasting from Arizona State University, oddly enough. And my brother raced midgets and sprint cars and Silver Crown cars, and that's what first brought us back here in the late 90s. And then about 2003, I moved back to California and found a track that had an opening, looking for an announcer, and thought I'd give it a shot. Then there was that was a Friday night track. Then I found one in King Speedway in Hanford, California. Was also looking for an announcer, and they were Saturday night tracks. So I got that gig, and they just started announcing back there and kind of learning how to do it, if you will. I always tell anyone if they want to get into motorsports announcing or television to go announce at their local racetrack, because it's not easy, and you learn a lot by having to sit up there with the microphone and carry the night from calling the racing and announcing birthdays and messing up people's names and having their moms yell at you and letting everybody know the merchandise trailer's open and there's hot dogs for sale and all that stuff. It's a really good training ground. So I did that for a year, and then was able to get a gig with the All-Star Circuit of Champions in 2003. I guess I announced that was 2002. 2003, I started with the All-Stars. Did that 3, 4, 5, and then convinced USAC to hire me. Did that from 6 to 10, and then got busy with a lot of TV work. And then this year, I did a lot of the events, like a field reporter, to doing a lot of voiceover work in the studio, which opened up my weekends. Levi Jones kind of been bugging me the last couple of years about coming back into the USAC. Well, I could do it this year, and so we put a deal together, and here I am back doing it. So it's good. I mean, it's the most fun thing to announce. Is the USAC stuff, so it doesn't get much better.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see you sometime down the road, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me on. Yeah. Hope you have a good rest of the year, bud.
Yeah, and anytime you want to come on, you're more than welcome.
I certainly appreciate it, bud.
Thank you. My guest today is Brian Hulbert with ASCS and the PR person. How's it going, Brian?
It's going all right.
Let's talk about, you also work with the Chili Bowl too, right?
That's correct. Working with ASCS and Emmett Hahn, it also very fortunate. It affords me to be the publicist and announcer for the not only ASCS but also the Lucas Oil Chili Bowl Nationals, presented by General Tire, as well as the Lucas Oil Tulsa Shootout.
And when we started earlier, you just visited your 116th track last week, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Never thought I'd visit 16 tracks, much less 116, but just went to 34 Raceway in West Burlington, Iowa, and great show, great car count. Paired with the Sprint Invaders, really have to thank all the drivers and the officials with the Sprint Invaders for coming in and helping support that event. Got to thank the owners and promoters of 34 Raceway. They were absolutely fantastic to work with and be around. They were very, very, very hospitable to everybody, and really look forward to being able to go back. It was a great show, and look forward to going back next year.
It's such a cool area just to go down to. It's not far for me to get to.
It's a neat track. It's one of the few tracks in Iowa that's not a fairgrounds half mile, and I know the drivers loved it, absolutely loved it.
And of course, you did Oski and Knoxville.
Yeah, and I mean when it comes to racetracks, when you want to talk about top notch, it's hard to beat Knoxville Raceway.
I remember when it was it was good, but not like it is today.
It's like everything. I mean, everything progresses, and Ralph Capitani had a vision, and it's neat to see that vision come to fruition and continue the way it has.
And having the ASCS there for 360 Nationals is kind of nice too.
It is. It's a great event to go to. It's a great event to be a part of. You're giving drivers a chance to run for decent money, and it's all leading up into the 410 Nationals, so it's a win-win for teams and fans.
Yeah, and you parents participated in the Nationals a couple times.
They did, actually, 3 times to be exact. Actually made the show in 2002 with Ricky Logan and the Lucas Oil 3S. The same year, we also won the inaugural Mr. Sprint Car title, and they got a chance this year to go up and actually see their names on the plaque with all the other owners and drivers. So they may not have been voted in, but by golly, they're in.
Yeah. And what's your favorite trip on the whole tour?
If we're talking just sheer scenery, it's the Northwest by far. The Pacific Northwest is just absolutely beautiful country. Getting to go to Skagit and Grace Harbor, coming back through Montana with Gallatin Speedway and Big Sky Speedway, if you're flying over that part of the country, you're missing out because it's just absolutely beautiful drive.
And you guys just came from Lake of the Ozarks last weekend too, I know. How did that go?
Great. 2 nights, good crowds, and I really have to give a tip of the hat to Tim Trimble and his group. Friday night, they got 4.5 inches of rain at that track. Any other track would have pulled the plug, and they worked nonstop to get that show in. And I know right about noon, 1 o'clock, it was looking a little sketchy on Saturday because about half the pit was still pretty questionable, but they just kept working it. They kept at it, and ended up being a great night of racing, great show. And I know the teams and the fans appreciate everything that they did.
What's your favorite event coming up?
Favorite event coming up? Ooh, man, we got some good ones coming up too. Kind of hard not to say the Hockin McMillan Memorial. I mean, that has grown into just an absolutely phenomenal event, and and I just 10,000 winged and non-winged. It truly is kind of the best of both worlds. The only way I think you can make it even better is if you throw in midgets, but there's only 24 hours in a day, and you've already got a ton of cars and a ton of racing. So that's a great event. The Fall Fling at Creek County Speedway is another one because it's got so many dynamics with it being a small quarter mile. It's not really high banked. It's got just enough where you can definitely get up on the chip and make something happen. But it's a driver's track. You definitely have to be on the wheel to make something happen. And of course, we end the season out this year with Tony Stewart presents the Vancouver Texas Sprint Car Nationals at Texas Motor Speedway. And that's another facility where when you walk in, your jaw just drags the floor behind you because it's just such a beautiful facility.
Going back to Chili Bowl, can you explain, if you have not been there, what you're looking for and stuff?
Oh, man. I could describe the Chili Bowl for the next 12 hours and still not fully encompass the entire event. It's one of those, when you hear this term, you have to see it to believe it. The Chili Bowl is definitely that. I mean, the first time I ever walked in that building and looked at the layout, the cars, the stands, the track, everything the way it's done, it is a logistical nightmare and masterpiece all at the same time. What Emmett and Lanny came up with and what those families have continued and built for going on now, would it be 34 years, is just absolutely phenomenal. It's probably the most intense racing you will see all year, and it's right at the start of the
year. It's the biggest midget race outside of probably the BC 39.
It is the biggest midget race.
Speaking of, what track would you love to announce that you never have?
Track that I announce at that I've never announced at. That's tough. I don't know. That's something I've never really thought about. I just feel fortunate to be able to do what I do and to have the support that I have of my family, my wife, and that they understand that this is what I've always had a passion for, and I'm fortunate in that I was able to follow a dream and turn it into a career. And I didn't have to go find a desk job.
You get to do something you love and still have family time.
Yeah, that's, and of course now, my wife and I have actually been together for about 5 years, been married for a little over 1, and we've got a 1-year-old son now, and it's the juggling act, and I do have to, I really have to give the utmost thanks to my wife, because she takes on a lot, especially if I am gone for a couple weeks at a time on some of these tours. It's, she's a school teacher and she's busy from sun up to sundown and beyond. So, it's great to have somebody that, understands what I do and takes on what she does, because there's a lot of women that couldn't do this, and she's got broad shoulders and she can take it on.
How did you ever come up with the minute with Mr. Chick Magnet?
That was actually a joke. We were joking around at PRI, and I just kind of mentioned it in passing, and Josh took it and ran with it. So when they were on the tour, we had the minute with the magnet, and it was great to do that with Josh. He's a great kid. I say kid, he's a grown man. His insight, what he has to say, his passion for the sport, it's refreshing. I mean, it's really neat. You get to see, kind of take a step back and understand why we all got into the sport.
And it growed this year at the Hall of Fame with this more than an hour.
Yeah, I wasn't up there for that. I had, after 360 Nationals and the Ultimate Challenge, I went ahead and came back for my son's birthday. So yeah. I heard about it. I heard it was good.
Can't believe he has 10 drivers, and some of them are on the tour still.
Yeah, he's got drivers in Knoxville, ASCS, the Outlaws. I can't remember if he has any on the All-Stars, but I'm sure he will soon.
And where would you, so on the ASCS, how many regions are there up to now?
Oh God, you're gonna make me lie here, because going brain dead a little bit. I want to say 10 regions. I'm right about all of them. You'd think I'd know this. 10 regions, national tour, upwards of about 200 actual ASCS sanctioned events over the course of the season.
I'm trying to think of a couple more questions for you. Speaking of the family, has the son got the bug yet?
Well, he's one, so at this point, all he's concerned about is when he's going to get fed next.
But you talk about the family aspect. The ASCS is bang for the buck, as far as I know.
Do what now?
The bang for the buck, where it's cheaper to go and watch.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up real bad.
Oh, anyways, I was talking about the bang for the buck, the value.
You know, I try to, you know, people say, well, the Outlaws run 90 times a year, and they've got the way they're made up, the way the series is done. It's a different structure than what you find with ASCS, where I tell people we're more the blue collar national tour, where the guy that actually has a job can still run the national tour. You know, Roger Crockett's a good example with his company, his graphics company. You know, he's still able to come out and compete on the national tour. You know, Tucker Dowdy, his family and their business, he's still able to come out and compete on the national tour. So, you know, we try to run about a 60 race schedule a year. That's our goal every year, is to have that 55 to 60 races. That way, it's not so much that it just wears a team into the ground, and it's not so little that it's you know, pointless. And every now and then we have the one-off shows where maybe it's only one or two here, one or two there, and we try to avoid that as much as possible and give the drivers, you know, like you said, the best bang for the buck, but they're able to go from track to track to track. It doesn't always happen logistically, but we try to make it as good for the teams as possible.
And it's like you can if you offer, you can go to the region if you want to.
Yeah, some of the national guys, if we do have a weekend off, they might go and catch the Sooner region, Lone Star region, the Warrior region. I mean, Sooner region races are $2,000 to win 300 stars, so they're still decent money. And even with our Mid-South region, it's, you know, a lot of them, they'll go catch I-30 to get some tune-up laps for short track nationals. They might go, we have a dual regional show at Lucas Oil Speedway in May. A lot of the national guys, if we're not racing, they'll go run that show just to get some laps in and get some notes when they come back for the Hockey McMillan.
Who's some of the characters that you've seen over the years on the tour?
I don't think the statute of limitations run out on that story.
But were you
you know, let me tell you, I've met some great people on this tour, and if there's anybody that I just look back and really have cherished memories, it's, you know, when Jason and Bobby Johnson were on the tour, and they were the first team and the first people on the tour that ever, you know, reached out a hand and helped me and were just there for me. You know, and losing Jason the way we did, it was heartbreaking, but to see Bobby carry on and with the team and see the success that they've had, you know, this year they won everything in Knoxville.
Yeah.
And, you know, with a talent like David Gravel, it's, you know, she's probably one of the toughest women I've ever met in the sport.
And she lost another person too before Jason even.
Yeah, that's why I said she's tough.
Yeah.
I don't know many men who could wade through what she's done in her life.
And were you on the tour when Gary Wright was around?
The last season that he was on the road was my first season.
Any Gary Wright stories?
Gary is quiet. Gary is very reserved. There's not really many stories I can tell about Gary, except even when he thought he was on his way out, he could still outrun 99% of them.
Did you ever get to see the Mr. Hockett race?
The Hockett McMillan?
No, Jesse himself.
No, never did get to see Jesse race. He actually, I can't remember what year he passed away, but I remember where I was at when I got the news. I was actually working in the shop with my dad.
That one was tough.
Yeah, it was.
The Brian Clausen one definitely hit home.
Yeah, Brian him and Lauren were awesome, absolutely awesome people. Of course, Lauren is still awesome. She's one of the truly nice people and ambassadors of the sport.
Yeah, I know. It was hard for me when I heard the news because I was personal friends with him too. Where's some of your big races? Can you talk about for the rest of the year?
Oh, of course, like I said, we got the Hawk McMillan coming up at Lucasville Speedway, the Fall Fling at Creek County Speedway, the Devil's Bowl Winter Nationals, and our season finale at the Texas Motor Speedway Dirt Track. Tony Stewart presents the Vancourt Texas Sprint Car Nationals. And if you want to see the rest of our schedule or even some of our regional schedules, you can find that online at ascsracing.com.
And you can, of course, hear it on Racing Boys, right?
Oh, yeah. You can hear it and see it all.
Thanks for your time, Brian.
All right, thank you.
Welcome to my next guest of the Dirt Racing Podcast, the USAC Silver Crown Champion, JJ Yeley. Welcome, JJ.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
I know you were in the BC last night. How did it go for you?
It unfortunately didn't go real spectacular for us. We borrowed an engine to run this race, and brought my car from Chili Bowl, and we had pretty decent speed. And on Wednesday, came from seventh, had a really tough race. Caught some brakes. Was trying to pass for the lead on the bottom, clipped with the U tires and spun. Had to go to the back with just a couple laps to go. So still in fifth, accumulated some points, some passing points, which is good. And then my qualifier yesterday, car felt pretty good. Just had to run the top. Ended up 24th in points, which locked us into a B main. Started 8th, got up to 6th, and about the third lap seemed like it was trying to drop a cylinder. So maintained right there. Caution came out, and I could tell there just was an issue. So instead of creating more damage and possibly blowing up the engine, we're just holding the infield and calling it a night, and watch the rest of it from top of the trailer.
What's your opinion about Knoxville in your race there?
About where?
Knoxville.
Obviously it's there's always going to be, in my mind, 3 all-time greatest dirt tracks, and obviously Eldora's going to be one, Knoxville's going to be the other. Manzanita, when it still existed, was the other one, and as time went on, and Manzanita slowly kind of deteriorated. A lot of the city of Phoenix grew up around it, and it unfortunately lost, and they shut it down. But to still have a place like Knoxville and Eldora thriving, the races and the venues that come there are second to none. So it was a lot of it was a lot of fun. It's a great surface, and obviously not my typical type of racetrack, just because it's a place where you go with wings, and I'm a non-wing guy. But I've won there in a Silver Crown car, been there in a sprint car, and almost won there, and just big, fast, round, half mile, a lot of fun.
And then down the road, you raced in the first Ultimate at Oski?
I did. Won the first Ultimate Challenge. Came back and finished third, I think, the next year, and that was. The racetrack, it's a fun place too. Pretty flat, but it's just that place is cool because it's more of a party venue. McCarl did a great job with it. The prizes. It was great for the fans. It was great for the owners and drivers, and that's going back a ways. But there's a lot of really cool dirt tracks, and it's nice to see. Like here at the BC, the amount of fans that showed up. A racetrack that last year was a temporary racetrack. It's now considered a permanent racetrack because it has the full back straightaway wall poured. I'm sure that they'll continue to do what they can to try to make the racing better. Not the racing better, but maybe the surface. If they can find some clay that held a little bit more moisture, knock down on the dust for the fans. But just the shape of the racetrack is perfect. Fantastic racing. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Doug Bowles did a fantastic job, and it made it truly a pleasure to come to participate.
couple more questions. The first one you drove for Steve Lewis. Can you talk about him a little bit?
Yeah, I can. He is and will always be probably one of the most famous owners in midget racing, and obviously he's famous on his own for his business and the PRI show and the things that he's accumulated over the years for auto racing. But whenever you drove one of those white number nines, it's just that feeling of you've made it because you're at the pinnacle of the midget sport and you're driving for, Bob Easton and Steve Lewis and some of the best equipment. And, they didn't spare any expense, time, effort. The cars were always fantastic. They were great to drive. And, Steve I've known him since I was a little kid. I will always consider him to be a friend and certainly, again, like I said, one of probably the best midget owners ever.
And then talk about the Dirt Million car that year.
Yeah, that was, that's the unfortunate side of me building my own cars and then getting to kind of engineer and have some fun. Tony Stewart was the owner of those cars back in 2003, and we'd already had a phenomenal season. And I've never been afraid to build something that was different, sometimes a little bit extreme, borderline even gaudy, and knowing what the rule book looked like, what it read between the lines, and essentially just built a car that I felt aerodynamically was going to enhance non-wing racing. And we debuted the car when we went to Chicagoland, which was the week before the Mopar Million. Won hot laps, fast time, won the heat, won the feature, swooped the card. And I think by Tuesday they'd already made a body rule package before we ever got to Eldora. So, it's fun to, I guess, stir the pot, make people get a little upset, and make rules for you. And unfortunately, we didn't win the Mopar Million with that car. I ended up finishing fourth, but I still have the car sitting in my dad's shop in Phoenix, Arizona. I mean, it ran a grand total of I think 3 races in its life. So it certainly wasn't the prettiest race car, but it was fast.
And then you were going for the championship when the Silver Crown went back in the early 2000s Syracuse. Talk about that track.
Anytime you take a dirt Silver Crown car onto a mile, it's already kind of hairy experience. And, you go to a place like Springfield, it's very fast. You can go to DuQuoin, it's even faster and wide. And, when we started racing DuQuoin at night, it had a cushion. You ran it basically like a sprint car. It's really crazy and scary how fast you were going. But, going to Syracuse, the racetrack was very, very narrow. The racetrack would get these crazy calcium deposits. They got worse and worse, and as you would hit them, the car would just instantly slide out. And so it made racing very interesting and fun. And I guess I was lucky enough. I was there twice, won both races. The very first one was exciting because Tobias, being from up there, having a modified background, we were racing pretty hard for the lead with about 10 laps to go, and he ran into me, almost crashed us both, and luckily I survived because it would have been a nasty wreck. But it's a shame to see some of these real famous racetracks that drivers long before me were going to and braving the elements are no longer around. But I guess as long as the race fans continue to go out and support the racetracks, hopefully we'll keep some of the good ones around for a long time.
And then the final question: did you ever run a modified there?
I did I ran a big block modified there, and it was funny because just the difference between the two. A Silver Crown car is so difficult to drive, especially on a mile, and getting behind the wheel of a big block modified. They're so heavy. They do have downforce. To me, it felt like the difference between running a non-wing sprint car and a wing sprint car was a lot easier. Unfortunately enough for me, I didn't run for a big team. I ran for Rick and Corky Thumb. Great group, kind of a Saturday night racers. We were a little bit down on horsepower, but in practice, I just continued to change gears because they were worried about RPM because I was just overdriving the corners. But I was very fast until the race started, and as we went into turn 1 and they all lifted well before I was anticipating lifting, the pace was just so slow that I kind of screwed everything up by having the wrong gear in the car. So instead of looking for that raw speed that I was looking for, not putting a forethought into the race pace that we were going to be running. So it made it difficult, but it was definitely fun. I enjoyed running those cars. Usually whenever we go to Watkins Glen or sometimes up in that area, I found a ride and run Bridgeport before, a couple of the other racetracks with rolling wheels that, or some more famous tracks for modifieds, but they're definitely a lot of fun to drive.
And then the final question: where are we expecting to see you next year up there?
It's hard to tell. Obviously, I don't get to do as much as I would like sometimes, which makes it a little bit difficult. But I might be lucky enough that I might get to run a couple more before the end of this year. They've got the big invitational gateway that I was unable to participate with last year. That would be fun to get to go do. There's a big PM race at the end of the year in Placerville, California. So we'll just have to wait and see once it gets closer.
Thanks for your time, JJ.
Everybody, thank you.
We appreciate all the guests this week. During the JJ episode, you heard some beating and banging. We were doing that from the Indianapolis Motorway Garage during the Xfinity race weekend.
Welcome to the Dirt Racing Podcast. We're going to talk about Monster Jam with my guest.
How we doing? Camden Murphy here. How we doing, buddy?
Okay, good. What's the difference? You also drive NASCAR between the Monster Jam and the Monster and here.
It's honestly kind of a big one, really. I mean, it's kind of have to try to find that switch to flick because you're in NASCAR, obviously you're doing 200 miles an hour, and when you're flying in a NASCAR car or truck, it's not a good thing. So it's definitely a bit of a change.
And what's the name of your truck?
The truck is Bakugan Dragonoids. Spin Master sponsored truck based off the card game Bakugan.
And what's your schedule looking for the season?
For the rest of the year, I actually have a show just about every weekend in October. Go to Glendale, Arizona, go out to Vegas for the All-Star Challenge the second week. I believe I'm in Houston, then Arlington, Texas. I'm really looking forward to it. And I end up going to Minneapolis in December, so it's a pretty good schedule here for the rest of the year.
And then where are you at on Twitter?
On Twitter, we're at Camden Murphy. You can come follow me there, and on Instagram at Camden.Murphy. Follow me on all those great social media platforms.
Best of luck to you.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Just a reminder, this is not the only episode this week. Tomorrow there'll be another episode, and stay tuned for that. And thank you, as always, for listening. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Racing Podcast.